Well, it's great to meet you, man. I'm looking forward to getting into your Quintet album, Impact. So thank you for taking a minute out today.
You're very welcome.
So let's begin our journey into your music and this
Okay.
album and your career by asking you this. 5 years ago, the pandemic was really taken off. It affected so many things for musicians in the world at large. How did you make it through it, and how has it impacted the way that you create and do things now?
Well, it's an interesting question. How I made it through it is um, we stopped playing. I mean, there was nothing going on. A lot of people were doing online um, performances, but I didn't go for it because I thought, an online performance is kind of the same as a recorded performance. You're watching it on a monitor. It's not the same as sitting in a club and and being a part of the moment and feeling the energy and stuff. So I just didn't do it. And so I just laid low basically during that time. My creative spurt, I guess you could call it, began in I guess about 2 years ago. I mean, I'd been playing a lot since I guess it was 2022 or whatever, 23 when I don't know when did the pandemic end? I guess it was 2024. I think so. Anyway, after the pandemic, I was very active playing live performances. Toronto, out here, there's a lot of jazz festivals and stuff. But no, I haven't made an album up to this point in like over 20 years. So, and it became obvious to me that like it's time. It's time. It's just time. And from that point on, I became very focused on composition. I wanted to write some new material for the album, and that was the focus, really. Um, and especially beginning this year in January, it was like a race to the finish line. And that's because I had booked the session in the studio for early March, and I had already had a CD release gig scheduled for April the 5th. 1 month after we go in the studio, I need to have CDs. So I was very busy writing and finishing tunes and orchestrating and arranging for the quintet from January the 1st right up until March the 6th, I guess it was.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what you're hoping the listener gets from this new album.
Okay. Well, obviously for me, the importance of making the new record is that I want to document where I'm at in terms of my playing and composition, and that's important. Secondly, I want to bring the straight ahead jazz genre into a modern interpretation, I guess you could say, and sort of marry the two, sort of a basic straight ahead, 1960s kind of sound with modern improvisations and interpretations, and most especially modern composition. So if you listen to the title track, it's a pretty fun, exciting, explosive, you could call it, tune, Impact itself. And then I wrote Second Voyage, which is a completely different type of tune. And that really felt more like we're really moving into some new territory here. Second Voyage was created from one lick, one phrase that was going around in my head for a long time. That was all it was, just one phrase. And I went and sat down at the piano and just played it over and over again. Nothing else. And so I'm just going to play this lick. And I got my eyes closed and I'm playing it and I'm playing it. And I love the way it makes me feel. I love that it's just a great zone that I'm in. It's almost like a meditative state. And so I built up from there. That one lick is the opening. When you hear the tune, you'll hear it start right away. That's the lick, and it's just trio for the first few measures, and then the horns come in and play the lick as well. And then after that, there's some modulation, some new melodies, a very surprising bridge with harmonies you don't expect, and then the final phrase is a almost a direct quote from Herbie's Maiden Voyage. And that's why it's one of the reasons I called it Second Voyage. I want to make it known that I was inspired by Maiden Voyage. The whole thing sounds and feels like a voyage. It feels like I'm out there on the blue water under a blue sky and kind of slowly gliding. And so that to me is a modern not a 1960s, not a regurgitation, if you will. It's something new and fresh, and it goes from there. It was just really to the purpose of the record, besides documentation, is to bring these two things together.
So take me back to the beginnings. How did the piano become your life? How did jazz become your world? How did all of this evolve into your career and who you are today?
Okay, well, piano was my whole life. Like I started playing the piano at age 4. I have pictures my mother took of me sitting at the piano playing "Catch a Falling Star" by Perry Como, which was on the radio and buzzing around in my head at 4 years old. So I started to play with one finger on
Yeah,
the piano, and it went from there. I don't remember a time that I didn't play the piano. There was a time that I couldn't reach the pedals,
yeah.
so but I was always playing the piano. I didn't take any formal education until I was in my 20s. So I was gigging by 18, 19 years old. Um, I have perfect pitch, so I could hear things and remember them and play them out. And so that was a great help in terms of being self-taught. I could hear everything and play it. And if I couldn't play it, I'd practice it until I could play it. So that was helpful. Jazz came in an interesting way, because early on in my life, I was just playing pop tunes on the radio, of course. Um, I discovered jazz from the fusion side. And it's interesting because most people went from mainstream to fusion. I went from fusion to mainstream. And I was excited about fusion. I remember hearing Larry Coryell, and I remember hearing John McLaughlin, and I certainly remember hearing Herbie when he did Headhunters. That was a very influential album for me. That was the first time I actually heard Herbie Hancock. I didn't hear his real, the stuff with Miles. I hadn't heard that, and so I was playing that, and through hearing it and memorizing it and working it out. I had a band. We went, played all that stuff. I had a synth and a Rhodes, and then what happened is I was 22 years old, and I met Armis Meisty, who was a piano player running some jazz studies in McGill University in Montreal, where I was born. And he sat me down and he said, "Play something for me." So I played all my fancy BS. And he said, "Oh, that's very nice. Let me show you some things." And he started to play some bebop and some Bill Evans. And I just basically, I've never heard anything like that. My whole brain went, and ears went, and just, I had no idea what he was doing. And it wasn't technically difficult. It was just something I'd never anticipated, never heard. The voicings were like, what's going on? Everything was just, I was hooked right there in his little studio in McGill. It was it. Like I'd swallowed the hook. You'd never get that out of me. I was completely and utterly hooked on mainstream. And it went from there. Then I entered McGill, took courses, ended up doing a jazz performance degree, and did all my kind of formal training. I used to go to New York and study with Kenny Barron. And that's a whole other story about how I met him, why that happened. But I used to go down and take a lesson once a month for a while, go and hear everybody. I mean, it was like I was immersed. All I did was listen, play, practice, and maybe go and have a pee every now and then. But it was pretty much nonstop immersion into the jazz mainstream.
So let me ask you this. What was the first live jazz show you saw that absolutely blew you away?
Huh. Think about that one. The first live jazz show that blew. I think it might have been Larry Coryell. Now he was still playing fusion at the time, but I remember he came to Montreal with the band with, I think it was Alphonse Mouzon and whoever else was there. And I was a teenager. I was probably about 17 or 18. I don't know what I was. And we were sitting, it's a funny gig. I mean, he was playing at some cafe in a university and there were no chairs. We all sat on the floor and he played and they all played. And I was just like, it's like, wow, that's incredible. Now that's a fusion gig. The first kind of mainstream, I can't remember exactly what I heard, but in Montreal, they had a very vibrant mainstream jazz scene at the time. Lots of mainstream straight ahead musicians were playing and working stuff out. And there were some veterans like Saeed Abdul Al Kabir, Charles Ellison, older guys that, Oscar obviously was still playing. I did see Oscar a few times. Um, I think, I used to go to, I saw Keith Jarrett early on. But I think, there was a club called the Rising Sun
Yeah.
where I ended up doing a bunch of gigs later on. And they brought in everybody. I saw Max and I saw Bill and, Sonny Stitt, Moody. Everybody came through there. And I was always in the front row, just like, yeah, Betty Carter, whoever. That was the place. That was the Village Vanguard of Montreal.
Wow. So, what do you like the best about being a professional musician? You've been at it for a while. What gets you up every day? What do you look forward to the most?
Um, Performances,
Yeah.
live performances. Practicing is nice. I do love composition. I love sitting down and kind of taking some things and trying to work them out and building a new tune. But that's I'm not a prolific composer. I take a long time to give birth. It's like a 9 month gestation to give birth to one tune kind of thing. And but I love live performances. I love a good gig. Whereas I can play a lot of duo gigs with Duncan Hopkins, trio with whoever. And now I really love my new quintet, the Jazz Impact Group quintet. This is to me everything I need to express myself and enjoy myself is this quintet. It's hard to get gigs with the quintet because, of course, quintets are more expensive for the club owner than a trio is. But that to me is like when I get to play with my quintet, we're playing my tunes and some standards. That's it for me.
So let me ask you this. What do you like to teach the younger players? You've been around for a while, you played a lot. What do you like to teach the younger players that you get around on the bandstand?
Teach them in a lesson or teach them when I'm performing.
Just in general, just about your aura and where you've been and what you've done, and just in general, what do you want them to understand about jazz music and just being a musician?
Oh, okay. Well, um, I guess the most important thing for me is as a performing musician, the most important thing is honesty and sincerity in the music. There's lots of people that can play great technically, play all the right notes and all that stuff. Um, I don't know. That's not it for me because I can do that too, and it's a trap that I fall into sometimes, and everybody does when you get some technique. But it's more about playing what's happening, what I'm feeling, what I'm feeling in the moment. Even if it's simple, simple is good. I like simple.
Yeah.
More space, less ostentatiousness. Young musicians, including myself at the time, we want to impress everybody and compete. There's a competition vibe, which is sort of odd for an artist. But then you kind of have to leave that and start playing and finding your own sound and playing and developing your own sound on the instrument and in the music. So I think the most important thing is sincerity. The music should be sincere, it should be honest. It shouldn't be I think there's many musicians that say when I get up in the bandstand I stop thinking, and yeah, that's the ideal,
Yeah.
because it's really easy to start thinking, well, this would work here. Well, I should play this. Oh, this is correct. But it's better to just stop thinking and just play and see how that goes. Now, advice for young musicians, one of the things I hear is that they've skipped to the front of the line in terms of their learning process, and especially in terms of harmony. I think every jazz musician should learn to play changes,
Yeah.
should learn to play the changes. Don't just play on the tops of the chords. Don't just play a couple of, make your living off of pentatonic scales or whatever. I think everybody should learn to play the changes. When I teach not just piano but jazz improv ensembles, small ensembles, where I sit down and they've got their instruments. We work on Charlie Parker solos, and we'll transcribe them, and everybody's got to play them and understand them, how to dig into the chords, how to get down to the bottoms of the chords before you start playing along the tops of the chords.
So let me ask you this: why do you love this music that we call jazz?
I don't know. It's a good question. Why do I love it? It's unpredictable. It's a full expression of anyone's musicality. It allows for any level of complexity or simplicity. It's just unlimited in terms of a mode of expression. I also love jazz because it's improvised music. There's very nothing much else going on. It's truly improvised music. It's a language. Some people say I don't like jazz. That's like saying I don't like French. You need to understand the language first, and then tell me if you like it or not. People, you get up there and you play a jazz solo. If they don't know the language, it's all just gibberish to them. And
Right.
eventually they start to learn. Oh, this is a story. This is a phrase. This is a question. This is a conclusion. That they start to hear things. So jazz has very unusual and seemingly unlimited possibilities for expression.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one dream jazz gig, where would you go?
Miles,
Yeah,
I never got to see Miles. I'd like
yeah.
to see Miles in the 60s with the quintet. I would just love that, would just be it for me. I watched those videos of them in France, and it's just like unbelievable, unbelievable. It was like, to me, that was the epicenter and the absolute quintessence of great jazz music, is that quintet playing those live gigs. I would have loved to see that.
I would too. I would join you. So, Steve, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a good Mr. Big Stuff. Who do you think you
Who
are?
do you think you are?
Mr. Big Stuff. Um, what I don't how do you answer a question like that? It varies, On some days I think I'm hitting the mark. Things are good. I love my life. Other days I feel like I can't do anything right. I can't play anything right. Nothing's flowing. And this is another thing the musicians have to understand, is like sometimes it's just not happening. And it doesn't change the fact that you're a good musician or a great musician, but there are days that it's just blocked. It's a flow, and sometimes for unknown reasons the flow gets blocked. But who do I think I am as a musician? I think I'm someone who's still learning. Um, Obviously, there wouldn't be anything to do if you're not learning. What do you do then? I get excited about hearing great music, and um, that's for me. That's it. I mean, I'm 71 years old, so I don't have a lot of years left, and that's another reason why I made the record. Is like, geez, either make the record or you're going to be making it from the old people's home.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of my mortality and the limited amount of time, and so I try to um, stay positive, and just keep learning and expressing.
So if anybody wants to pick up the new album, catch you live, any of your previous work, anything going on in your world, where do they go?
They go to Bandcamp.
Okay.
Bandcamp is the place. I put all of my albums up there. My debut record, which by the way was a great record, came out on vinyl only, and now I have it digitally. That was with Bob Mover, Steve Holt, Charles Ellison as a sextet on side A. We had side A and B in those days, right?
Yeah.
And side B is just trio. I mean, that's a great record. Um, so they're all there. And the new record as well, Impact. They're all there, and I like Bandcamp because it's clean, it's easy. You can download high quality files, or you can order the CD if that's your preference. You can listen, stream, and artists get paid more from Bandcamp than they do from anything else. And I'll go on the record also and say I'm really not cool with streaming, especially Spotify. I find that with Spotify, we don't artists don't get paid. It just doesn't, it's exploitative, and it's a much better option for people. Yeah, you can stream, sure, and then if you like it, you should go and support not just me, but whoever, you know. That's important. So Bandcamp is where my stuff resides. Yeah.
Wonderful. Steve, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your
Oh,
time.
my pleasure.
I appreciate it.
I thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Jazz fans, Joe Domino here, the host of the weekly Neon Jazz radio show and regular interview series being produced and distributed from Lee Summit, Missouri. We are very excited to let you know about the second annual Lee Summit Jazz Festival taking place again this summer on June 28th at the Bridge Space, located at 210 Southwest Market Street in downtown Lee Summit. Following the success of the 2024 festival, the lineup will include Lee Summit students, Casey Area Youth Jazz, Paganova with Michael Pagan, Horoscope with Stan Kessler, Brad Gregory, Adam Larson, and the Lee Summit Jazz Orchestra. There will also be food trucks and vendors to round out a day of celebration. Early bird tickets are 2 for $30, and all details can be found at lsjazzfest.com. We can't wait to see you there.